Grace used to believe nightmares faded with sunlight. That was before a wedding night turned into a massacre, before she learned every promise of family tradition hid a blade in the shadows. She'd burned that mansion to the ground. She'd watched the killers scream as the flames swallowed them. She survived. But nightmares don't die, they wait. And tonight, they found her again. Grace's breath fogged the glass of the tiny cabin window as she stared out into the darkness. The trees stood unnaturally still, as if listening. Faith sat at the kitchen table behind her, fingers trembling around a mug of untouched tea. "Do you think they'll come tonight?" Faith whispered. Grace didn't answer. She had no comfort left to give. The letter had arrived 3 days ago, handwritten, sealed in black wax, placed on the center of their table despite every locked door. The game is not over. The throne has no heir. You are invited. Ready or not, here we come. For symbols had been drawn beneath the message, a serpent, a wolf, a bleeding crown, and a crooked hand. For rival families. For houses older than the Le Domes dynasty. For factions now competing for something they called the throne. Faith didn't know what that meant. Grace did. It meant power, the kind that needed sacrifice. Blood. Rituals. She had walked away from that world, but the world hadn't walked away from her. A twig snapped outside. Faith jolted. Grace. Grace raised a hand. Don't move. She slowly stepped toward the window, muscles tightening. The porch was empty, moonlight cold and thin. But her instincts screamed. Someone was out there. Not someone. Several. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. Against every instinct, she answered. A woman's voice drifted through the speaker, bright and cheerful like a game show host dripping in venom. Grace. My dear survivor. Congratulations again on your previous win. Truly inspirational. But now the real event begins. Grace's throat tightened. Who is this? Oh, just a friend. And a competitor. But I wanted to warn you, neutral courtesy before the hunt, you understand? Faith mouthed, who is it? Grace shook her head. The voice continued. The throne is empty. We all want it. But the rules are simple, someone must claim you. Your bloodline is the key. And whoever takes you wins everything. Grace froze. And if we refuse, she whispered. The woman laughed softly. Then you'll be eliminated. Quickly or painfully, that part depends on the family who finds you. A pause. I hope you run, Grace. It's so much more fun when you run. The line went dead. Grace lowered the phone, her heartbeat hammering through her ribs. Faith stood, eyes wide with terror. Tell me that wasn't what I think. Another sound. Heavy. Deliberate. Boot steps. Grace grabbed Faith's wrist. We need to go. Now. She ushered her toward the back door, but the lights in the cabin flickered, once, twice, and then the entire house plunged into darkness. The silence was suffocating. Then came the slow creak of the front porch boards. Someone was walking toward the door. Grace's voice dropped to a whisper. Faith, get to the cellar. Don't look back. Faith hesitated, trembling. What about you? Grace forced a smile she didn't feel. I've survived worse. She hadn't. But she needed Faith to believe it. Another footstep. Closer. Then another. Whoever it was didn't hurry. They wanted the sisters to hear them coming. Grace shoved Faith toward the cellar door. As soon as her sister disappeared into the darkness below, Grace turned and grabbed the nearest weapon, an iron fireplace poker. The front doorknob twisted. Slowly. Grace's breath caught. A faint voice from outside whispered, almost playful. Ready, or not. The door burst inward with violent force. Grace swung the poker, connecting with something solid. A figure in a white plague mask lurched back, hissing in pain but not falling. A second masked figure stepped out of the shadows behind him. Then a third. And a fourth. All wearing different masks: serpent, wolf, crooked hand, bleeding crown. The families had arrived. The serpent mask tilted its head like a curious predator. "Hello, Grace. We've come to claim you." Her grip tightened. "Over my dead body." The wolf mask chuckled. "Yes. That's the idea." Grace's pulse roared in her ears as the four masks stepped into the ruined doorway. The game had begun. Again. The serpent mask moved first. Grace barely saw the knife before it flashed toward her throat. She ducked, the blade grazing her ear, slicing a burning line down her cheek. Blood trickled warm against her jaw. She swung the iron poker again with rattling desperation, striking the figure's shoulder. The masked intruder staggered back, but only for a heartbeat. The wolf mask stepped in with a growl. He was massive. His presence filled the doorway like a living shadow, shoulders brushing both sides of the frame. Grace's fingers tightened around the poker, knuckles whitening, pulse pounding so hard she felt it in her teeth. "You run well," the wolf rasped, voice low and guttural. "But tonight, we run faster." He lunged. Grace dove behind the overturned table just as his fists smashed into the wood, sending splinters bouncing across the floor. She scrambled backward, breath ragged, heart slamming her ribs as the serpent and crooked hand masked figures circled like silent wolves. The bleeding crown mask lingered in the doorway, unmoving. Watching her. Studying her. Marking every breath she took. "Why me?" Grace hissed, shaking. "Why does everyone want me dead?" The bleeding crown mask tilted their head slowly, almost gently. "Because you lived when you should have died. And because your blood is the last key to the throne." The serpent mask whispered, "Your survival broke the old line. You ended what was sacred. You must either be claimed, or erased." The wolf leaned in, sniffing the air like an animal. "And we all hunger for different things." Grace's stomach twisted. This wasn't ritual, they enjoyed this. Every second of it. From beneath the floorboard she heard Faith's muffled breathing, fast and panicked. Grace knew her sister was listening, frozen in the dark. If Grace failed now, Faith wouldn't last a minute. She had to get them away. She had to think. She had to. The crooked hand mask hurled something toward her. A heavy, rusted bear trap. Clattered across the floor, snapping shut just inches from her fingers. The sound echoed like a gunshot, metal teeth glinting. "You won't make it far," the figure whispered in a reedy, trembling voice. "But we like when they try." The wolf mask suddenly grabbed the table, flipping it effortlessly. The wood slammed against the wall as Grace rolled aside, barely avoiding his hand as it closed on empty air. Splinters dug into her palms as she crawled across the floor. She couldn't outrun all of them, not in this tiny cabin. But she didn't have to. She only needed one opening. The serpent mask lunged again, knife whistling downward. Grace caught his wrist mid-swing, pure adrenaline making her stronger than she should be. She slammed his hand against the fireplace stone, and the knife dropped from his grip. Before she could grab it, the wolf seized her by the ankle and yanked her backward across the floor. Grace screamed, clawing at the floorboards, feeling her skin tear on the wood. She kicked violently, catching the wolf across the mask. It cracked slightly, revealing part of a twisted grin underneath. "Little rabbit," he growled, "you can scratch, but you can't escape." He dragged her toward him, and toward a long serrated blade strapped to his belt. Until a sudden, deafening boom shook the cabin. The bleeding crown mask staggered as the front window exploded inward. A shadowy figure hurled a smoke grenade into the room, the thick gray plume choking the air within seconds. The wolf roared, releasing Grace. A distorted voice shouted from outside. "Grace! Move!" She knew that voice. Her stomach sank with sick recognition. "No," she whispered. The serpent hissed, coughing violently in the smoke. "She has allies now, unfair." The crooked hand mask shrieked, this wasn't in the rules. Grace crawled to her knees as a gloved hand reached through the smoke haze, gripping her wrist. "Come on," the voice snapped. "Unless you want to die in Chapter 2. She looked up through burning eyes. The mask was simple. Black. Featureless. But she remembered the posture, the stance, the low steady breath. It was Alex's brother. The only surviving member of the Le Domes family. Daniel. The one man she promised she'd kill if she ever saw again. Grace jerked her arm back. "Don't touch me." Daniel's voice was calm but sharp. "You want you and your sister dead? Fine. Stay. But if you want to make it to dawn, you come with me." Behind him, the four masked families pushed through the smoke. Their silhouettes were monstrous, twitching, animalistic, like shadows that had learned hunger. The wolf's voice rumbled through the haze. "Run, little rabbit. Run so we can chase." Grace didn't choose Daniel. She chose survival. She grabbed his hand. And the two of them sprinted into the night as the masked families poured out after them. The hunt officially begun. The forest was a blur of freezing air and snapping branches as Grace and Daniel sprinted through the darkness. Behind them, the four masked families tore out of the cabin like predators unleashed from cages, shrieking, laughing, growling, each sound more inhuman than the last. Grace's lungs burned, but she didn't slow. Not when the serpent mask hissed her name from the shadows. Not when the wolf mask howled like something half-beast. Not even when she felt eyes, too many eyes, watching her from somewhere above the treetops. "Faster," Daniel rasped. "They're fanning out." "You think I don't know that?" she snapped, ducking under a low branch. Daniel didn't reply. He didn't need to. They both heard the crunch of boots closing in behind them. And worse, the whisper of leaves shifting as if someone was running parallel to them through the trees. Someone lighter, quicker, silent as the wind. The Crooked Hand family's tracker. Grace had heard stories about them. Stories about a bloodline that trained children to stalk prey in forests before they could speak. Stories about hunters who walked barefoot in snow so their steps made no sound. Stories about a girl who could sense a heartbeat from 50 yards away. Grace didn't believe those stories. Until now. Because behind her, mixed with the pounding of her own pulse, she heard it. A faint skittering. A soft tapping. Like fingertips brushing bark. They weren't alone. Not even for a second. Daniel grabbed her elbow. "Down here." Grace stumbled as he pulled her toward a slope so steep it almost looked like the earth had been cut open. Without warning, he shoved her over the edge. They tumbled together, hitting rocks, roots, and cold mud as they slid into the ravine below. Grace landed hard. Pain shot up her ribs. Daniel landed beside her, groaning. "Alive?" "Unfortunately," she muttered. A branch snapped directly above them. Grace pressed herself against the dirt wall of the ravine, breath shaking. The moonlight illuminated four silhouettes at the rim: serpent, wolf, crooked hand, and bleeding crown. The wolf mask leaned forward, sniffing the air. "She's close. I smell fear." Grace's teeth clenched. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. "Don't move." For once, she didn't argue. The serpent mask spoke softly, venomous. "She has a sister hiding in the cabin. Should we go collect her?" Grace's blood froze. The crooked hand mask clapped their hands excitedly. "Yes. Yes, let's take the little one. Fear spreads faster when you tear from the roots. The wolf growled. Focus. Grace is here. Grace silently mouthed Faith again and again, chest tightening, a hot tear burning down her cheek. She tried to stand, tried to run, but Daniel's arm held her down. If you make a sound, he whispered, they'll know exactly where. She wanted to punch him. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tear the forest apart and find Faith. But she remained still. The masked figures slowly drifted along the rim of the ravine. Their movements were synchronized, predatory, as if the four families hunted not as rivals but as a single beast with four monstrous heads. As they faded deeper into the trees, Grace exhaled shakily. Faith, she whispered. I need to go back. I have to get her. Daniel grabbed her wrist. If you go alone, they'll get you before you even reach the cabin. And with you? He stared at her through the black mask. Maybe you make it 10 extra seconds. She ripped her arm free. I don't trust you. He didn't flinch. Good. Trust gets you killed. Grace turned away, fury burning through the fear. Why are you helping me? Daniel hesitated. For the first time, something human flickered in the darkness behind his mask. Because blood doesn't forget, he said quietly. And I owe you a debt. Grace froze. A debt? From him? Before she could respond, a sound echoed through the ravine. A soft creak. Too gentle to be a branch. Too steady to be an animal. Daniel stiffened. Grace, don't turn around. Grace turned anyway. Up on the ravine wall behind them, half hidden in the shadows, stood a small figure. Barefoot. Thin. Head cocked unnaturally to the side. The crooked hand tracker. Her mask was carved wood, with two wide holes for the eyes and a mouth that stretched into a permanent, jagged grin. Her hands were twitching. Not with fear. With excitement. Grace's stomach twisted. The girl whispered, voice childlike and trembling with glee. I found you. Daniel grabbed Grace's hand. Run. Now. They sprinted deeper into the ravine. As the crooked-hand girl dropped silently from the ledge above and began to chase them on all fours. Faster than anything human. Grace's feet hammered the mud as she and Daniel tore through the ravine, but the sound behind them was worse, far worse. Hands. And feet. Skittering across stone like a spider far too large to exist. The crooked hand tracker was fast. Not human fast. Not child fast. But something distorted, twitching, and wrong. Grace risked a glance back. She wished she hadn't. The girl's limbs bent at angles that defied bone. She crawled with her back arched upward, neck twisted, wood mask grinning wide enough to split skin. Her fingers clawed into the dirt with sickening cracks. She didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Didn't slow. Daniel pushed Grace forward. Don't look, just run. I am running. The ravine narrowed, walls closing in like a throat. Boulders jutted from the ground, slick with moss, turning the path into a gauntlet of obstacles. Behind them, the girl shrieked, high and sharp, like metal being scraped against bone. Grace scrambled over a fallen log, nearly slipping, but Daniel grabbed her arm. His grip was tight, almost frantic. She's marking us, he said, voice shaking. That scream, it means she's locked onto our fear scent. Oh, fantastic, Grace snarled. I've always wanted to be emotionally sniffed to death. Daniel didn't laugh. You don't understand. The Crooked Hand family trains trackers to sense terror. The stronger your fear, the faster they move. Grace froze mid-step. The girl's pace behind them quickened. Grace, don't freeze. Daniel yanked her forward. She stumbled, heart pounding so hard she tasted blood. But I wasn't. You were. You felt fear spike. She felt it too. A choking panic crawled up Grace's throat. The idea of her emotions being weapons the families used against her felt monstrous, violation of the deepest kind. Like she wasn't even allowed to be afraid of the danger trying to kill her. The girl screeched again. Closer. Too close. Daniel shoved Grace up a small slope. Move. They climbed the steep wall of the ravine, hands slipping on roots, boots sinking into wet soil. Daniel pushed her upward, giving her momentum. Grace reached the top and turned back to pull him up. But Daniel's eyes widened behind the mask. Grace, don't look down. She looked. The crooked hand tracker was almost upon him, her wooden mask inches from his boots, her crooked fingers digging into the earth as she climbed vertically like an insect. Her voice was a breathy, trembling whisper. I smell, the sister. Grace's blood turned to ice. Faith. The girl's head jerked toward Grace with a snap so violent it sounded like her neck cracked. Her voice quivered with excitement. You have two. Two fears. Two hearts. Two screams. Grace backed away, dragging Daniel over the ledge with every ounce of strength she had. He sprawled onto the forest floor beside her as the girl launched herself up the slope, leaping like a predator. Daniel grabbed Grace, and they both rolled aside just as the girl landed where they had been, her body folding and unfolding with insect-like precision. Grace's stomach lurched. Daniel's voice trembled. She doesn't stop, Grace. She doesn't talk. She doesn't think. She just hunts what's afraid. The girl's head tilted at an unnerving angle, mask inches from the leaves. She breathed in. Deep. Long. Slow. The way someone inhales the scent of their favorite meal. Then she giggled. The sound was tiny. Fragile. Sweet. It was the most horrifying sound Grace had ever heard. Daniel whispered, "We need to run." Again. But this time, no fear. Grace stared at him. Are you out of your mind? She tracks terror. Shut it down. She's trying to rip our faces off. Then fake it, he snapped. Control your breathing. Think cold. Think empty. Think, nothing. The girl twitched. She sensed their hesitation. Grace forced herself to breathe slowly, even though her body screamed to flee. She shut her eyes, focusing on anything but terror, Faith's laugh, sunlight, normal life. But fear crept in anyway. A cold hand on her spine. A whisper, she'll get Faith next. And the girl smelled it. She shot forward. Daniel shoved Grace aside. The girl's claws slashed the air where Grace's face had been. Run. They sprinted through the trees. Branches whipped their skin. The ground blurred beneath them. The girl scuttled behind, gaining speed. Grace could hear her nails clicking on stone. Could feel her breath on her ankles. Could sense her smile behind that mask. But as they reached the tree line, another sound split through the forest. A whistle. A long, low, commanding whistle. The girl froze instantly, body twisting to face the direction it came from. From the darkness, a tall figure stepped forward. The Crooked Hand Patriarch. His mask was carved with spiraling fingers and hollow eyes. Come, little one, he croaked. We hunt the sister now. Grace's heart shattered. Faith. Faith was next. Before she could move, Daniel grabbed her wrist. We go now, he whispered. Or we die before sunrise. Grace didn't argue. They fled into the night, while the Crooked Hand family turned their full attention toward the cabin. Toward Faith. Toward the sister they now hunted. Grace had never run this fast in her life. Every step felt like sprinting through thick mud, her legs trembling, vision shaking. But none of the pain mattered, nothing mattered, except one thought hammering inside her skull. Faith is alone. Faith is alone. Faith is alone. Daniel kept pace beside her, breathing hard but controlled. Too controlled. Grace hated that about him, that he could stay calm while her world was ripping apart. The trees thinned, revealing the faint glow of the cabin through the branches. Grace's heart leaped. Then immediately plummeted. The door was open. Wide open. Soft light spilled onto the ground like something had dragged it out. "No," Grace whispered. "No, no, no, Faith." She sprinted the last stretch, stumbling through the doorway, and nearly collapsed at what she saw. The cabin wasn't empty. It wasn't destroyed. It was organized. Clean, neat, unsettlingly perfect. Everything had been moved into exact lines, chairs aligned like soldiers, knives placed in a careful spiral on the table, the rug smoothed out with meticulous precision. A pattern carved into the wood floor glistened with something dark. Blood. A tight knot formed in Grace's stomach. Daniel scanned the room. "She's not dead." "How do you know?" Grace snapped, voice cracking. "Because they always leave the dead messy," he answered quietly. Grace felt sick. She dropped to her knees, brushing her fingers across the carved pattern in the floor. The grooves were still warm, still oozing. Not Faith's blood, Grace recognized the color, the metallic scent. Not her sister. Someone else. Daniel crouched beside her. "Look." He pointed toward the wall. Grace's breath hitched. A small handprint, bloody, child-sized, pressed near the floorboards. Next to it, scratched into the wood, crooked and frantic. "Run, Grace. Run." The last line was smeared, interrupted. A streak of blood dragged across the wall, as if someone small had been yanked away mid-sentence. Faith. Grace's throat closed. "She tried to warn me." Daniel grabbed her arm, shaking gently. "Grace, listen to me. They didn't take her to kill her." Grace looked at him through tears. "And that's supposed to make me feel better?" He lowered his voice. "No. It's supposed to terrify you." Grace froze. Daniel's mask tilted toward the pattern on the ground. "The Crooked Hand family doesn't take sisters to slaughter them. They take them for..." He stopped. Grace's eyes narrowed. "For what?" He hesitated. Then. "For offerings." Grace went cold. "Offerings to what?" she whispered. Daniel swallowed. "They don't worship gods. They don't worship demons. They worship the throne. The power behind it. And girls with fear in their blood, like Faith, they call them echoes. Perfect gifts. Perfect sacrifices." Grace shook her head violently. "No. No. She's not some ritual." Daniel leaned closer, voice urgent. "Grace. They need Faith alive. They need her screaming. They need her terrified. They need you terrified too. That's why they left that message. To pull you in." Grace stared at him, horrified. "So they want me to come after her?" "Yes." "Then that's exactly what I'm doing." Daniel sighed. "Grace, if you walk into their territory, you won't come back." Grace stood up, fists clenched. "I'm not letting them carve my sister like a trophy." Daniel stepped in front of her. "You can't protect her if you die." She shoved him away. "Then don't follow me." He caught her wrist, grip tightening. "I'm not protecting you. I'm protecting the debt." Grace glared. "What debt?" Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. Because a voice whispered from the corner of the room. A voice high, trembling, childlike. The Crooked Hand Tracker Girl. She stepped out of the shadows, mask glinting in the firelight. Her hands were wet. Dripping. Grace's heart nearly stopped. The girl giggled softly, tilting her mask. They took her, she whispered. She cried for you. She said your name. So many times. Grace's knees weakened. But we like that, the girl continued. Fear tastes sweeter when it comes from love. Daniel moved in front of Grace, knife drawn. Where is she? The girl's wooden mask shifted toward him. She's where sisters go. Grace's breath caught. Where? The girl smiled behind the mask. Grace could feel it. In the place where we fix the broken ones. She lifted her bloody hands playfully. You should hurry. They're starting soon. Grace lunged. But the tracker girl scuttled backward up the wall, vanishing into the rafters like a spider sinking into darkness. Grace felt something inside her shatter. Faith wasn't just taken. She was being prepared. And Grace understood one thing with absolute clarity. This wasn't a rescue anymore. This was a race. A countdown. A nightmare she had to outrun. Daniel, she whispered, voice trembling. We're getting her back. He nodded slowly. Then prepare yourself, Grace. His tone darkened. Because the Crooked Hand family doesn't fix the broken ones. They break them until the pieces scream. Daniel led Grace through the forest with a speed and precision that made her wonder how many times he had walked this exact path before. His steps were silent, calculated. Grace's were desperate, scraping against roots and stones. The trees grew twisted the further they went, bending unnaturally as though bowing toward something they feared. Cold air seeped down Grace's spine, colder than the night itself. She felt watched, by the forest, by the families, by something older than both. Daniel stopped abruptly. We're close. Grace scanned the darkness. Where? I see nothing. That's the point, he muttered. They hide their sanctuaries underground. If you see the entrance, it's already too late. Grace swallowed hard. And Faith is in there. Daniel nodded once. Grace's fists trembled. Then move. Before Daniel could respond, a soft sound floated through the trees. A hum. A gentle, wavering hum. Childlike. Broken. Almost a lullaby. Grace froze. Faith, she whispered hoarsely. Daniel grabbed her arm. No. That's not her. How do you know? Because Faith doesn't hum with her mouth shut. Grace blinked, then realization washed over her. The hum wasn't coming from lips. It was vibrating through the ground. Through the earth beneath them. Grace crouched, pressing her hand into the cold soil. The hum grew louder, pulsing beneath her palm like a subterranean heartbeat. Daniel cleared his throat. They call this place the stitching room. Grace shuddered. Why? Because this is where they fix the ones they take. Restitch their fear. Reshape their minds. He hesitated. They don't kill echoes. They adjust them. Grace wanted to vomit. Adjusted how? Daniel lowered his voice. Into conduits. They don't need to understand the throne, they just need to scream for it. Fear amplifies the ritual. Terror fuels the power. And Faith? She's probably being prepared. Grace felt her pulse spike. Daniel tensed immediately. Control your fear. He warned. The tracker will feel it. Too late. A twig snapped behind them. Grace spun. Nothing. Just darkness. But the darkness shifted. Branches rustled overhead. Leaves scraped against bark. Something crawled through the trees, quiet but unmistakably fast. Daniel shoved Grace behind him. She's close. The tracker's shadowing us. Grace clenched her jaw. Let her come. I'll break her mask. Daniel gave a mirthless laugh. You won't touch her. The Crooked Hand family trains their little hunters to die before they fail. She will outrun us, outscent us, outlast us. Grace stepped forward anyway. Then she hasn't met me. Daniel sighed in frustration. Grace, listen. If we can get inside the stitching room, the tracker won't follow. Why not? Because that place belongs to the patriarch. Even she fears him. He paused. Everyone does. Grace's skin prickled. Show me the entrance. Daniel nodded and began clearing leaves from the base of a massive oak. Beneath the tangled roots, a wooden hatch appeared, old, dark, carved with spiraling finger-like marks. The Crooked Hand family's symbol. Grace hesitated. It looks small. Oh, it is, Daniel replied. You crawl. Grace grimaced. Fantastic. Daniel yanked the hatch open. A deep, cold draft rose from below. The humming grew louder, warped, rhythmic, almost chanting. Grace's chest tightened. Faith. I'm coming. Daniel gestured. You first. Stay low. Stay quiet. Grace took a breath, and slid into the opening. The wood scraped her shoulders. Dirt crumbled into her hair. She crawled deeper, guided only by the faint glow ahead. The tunnel twisted downward like the throat of some buried beast. Behind her, the hatch closed. Grace tensed. Daniel? I'm right behind you, his voice echoed faintly. Just keep moving. Grace pressed forward. The humming grew louder. Then. A whisper threaded through the darkness. Gracie. Grace froze. Her blood turned to ice. Faith. But the whisper wasn't desperate. It wasn't crying. It wasn't even human. It came from deeper inside, too smooth, too calm, too rehearsed. Like someone practicing her sister's voice. Gracie, come see what they fixed. Grace's breath shattered. No. No, no, no. That wasn't Faith. Someone was using her fear against her. Mimicking her sister. Mocking her. Grace crawled forward faster, heart pounding, because if they were already copying Faith's voice, then her sister was somewhere close. Somewhere terrified. Somewhere being prepared. Finally, the tunnel opened into a chamber. Grace pulled herself out. And stopped dead. The stitching room was a nightmare. The walls were covered in handprints, hundreds, small and large, smeared in dark, dried streaks. Wooden masks with warped smiles hung from ropes like lifeless faces waiting to be claimed. Strange symbols were carved into the clay floor, forming a circular pattern around a wooden table. And on the table. Ropes. Clamps. Tools. None of them sharp. Worse, they were blunt. Made not to cut, but to shape. Grace's stomach twisted violently. And then she saw it. A small bracelet on the table. Pink thread. 3 wooden beads. Faith's. Grace staggered forward, choking out a breath. I'm close. I'm here. Suddenly, Daniel emerged from the tunnel behind her. But he wasn't looking at the table. He was staring past her. Face pale. Voice barely audible. Grace, don't turn around. Grace went cold. Why? He exhaled shakily. Because someone else is here. Watching you. Grace turned anyway. And a figure stood in the far corner of the room. Tall, motionless, mask shining in the flickering light. The Crooked Hand patriarch. His voice cracked like splitting wood. You made it, Grace. He lifted something into the light. A ribbon. Faith's ribbon. Took you long enough. The woods were silent, too silent. No wind, no animals, no distant footsteps. It was as if the forest itself were holding its breath, waiting to see who would die next. Grace and Faith moved between the skeletal trees, their legs shaking, their clothes torn, their faces streaked with dried blood. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. They both felt the same thing. Something was following them. Something worse than the four families. Something older, hungrier, and infinitely patient. It wasn't until the trees thinned that they saw it. The throne. A towering structure made of splintered wood and rusted metal, wrapped in thick chains and half-buried bones. It sat in a clearing drenched in moonlight, as if waiting, no, inviting. Faith whispered, "It's real, it's actually real." Grace felt the air change. The cold grew deeper, heavier, as though the darkness itself had gravity. Her hand instinctively grabbed her sister's sleeve. "Don't go near it." But Faith was already taking a step forward. Before Grace could stop her, the forest erupted with sound, branches snapping, leaves cracking, footsteps rushing from every direction. All four families burst into the clearing at once. The Harrows with their long-range rifles. The Caldwells with serrated knives. The Romanos with chains and meat hooks. And the Crows with black masks and machetes. They circled Grace and Faith like wolves around two wounded deer. A Caldwell woman, thin, sharp-eyed, pointed her blade at Grace. "You ran far, sweetheart. But the game ends here. Throne belongs to my bloodline." "No," a Harrow man snapped. "The Harrows have hunted for 3 generations for this moment." A Romano boy laughed, eyes glowing with mania. "You're all wrong. The throne belongs to whoever survives the longest." A Crow stepped forward in silence. Then another. Then another. 6 of them in total. Not speaking, just slowly raising their machetes. Faith grabbed Grace's arm. "We're done. We can't fight all of them." Grace swallowed, tasting blood in her throat. "We don't have to win, we just have to survive." The families lunged at each other. And the clearing exploded into chaos. Gunshots shattered the night. Blades clashed, screams echoed, bodies collapsed into black puddles of mud. The air turned metallic with the smell of blood. But even inside the madness, Grace noticed something horrifying. The throne was waking up. It groaned, long, deep, and hungry, like a massive creature stretching ancient limbs. The chains rattled as if something inside them were breathing. The bones at its base began to crack open, releasing black, sticky fluid that crawled across the ground. Everyone fighting froze. "What the hell?" a Romano whispered. Then the throne screamed. A sound not from this world. A sound that tore into the mind, slicing through reason, ripping apart sanity. Some of the fighters dropped to their knees, clutching their heads. Others staggered back, vomiting. Faith screamed, "Grace! It's alive, it's feeding on them." And it was. Every drop of spilled blood crawled toward the throne like magnetized insects. Dead bodies twitched, dragging themselves closer as if compelled. The forest floor pulsed like breathing skin. Harrow men fired at it. The bullets sank into the wood as if swallowed. A Caldwell woman ran. The trees closed around her like jaws. One by one, each family member disappeared. Swallowed by the forest, devoured by the throne, or torn apart by the shadows around it. Soon, only Grace and Faith remained. The throne turned toward them. Not physically, but spiritually, mentally, like an eye made of darkness focusing its gaze. Grace felt its whisper inside her skull. "Sit. Claim power. Feed me. Become what you were meant to be." Her knees buckled. Her vision flickered. She felt herself drifting toward the grotesque, pulsing structure. Power burned like fire behind her eyes. Faith shook her violently. Grace, no. Grace blinked hard, snapping back into consciousness. The throne roared, angry, the black fluid rising like hands reaching for her. Run, she shouted. They sprinted. Branches slapped their faces. Shadows nipped at their heels. The forest screamed behind them. They didn't stop until they burst onto a dirt road, collapsing, gasping, trembling. For a moment, there was silence. Then Grace whispered. It's not over. Faith swallowed. The families are gone, the throne is gone, what else is left? Grace stared back into the forest. The trees pulsed. Something massive moved between them. We didn't escape, she said. Her voice cracked with terror. We were released. And behind them, deep in the forest, the throne whispered. Ready or not? Here I come.